Got chips to boost the global economy? How is the global shortage of semiconductors negatively affecting the car industry? There's a little spider causing havoc in various industries. This tiny spider is called the microchip or semiconductors shortage. How does this global shortage of semiconductors affect you? And how is it actually good news and bad news at the same time? Welcome to the World Econ News. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and hit the notification button to get updates and information about the latest international economic news items. You've probably heard over the past 2 years about the global shortage of semiconductors. Yet, despite all the media attention, most people and investors alike still have very little knowledge about it, how it affects the global economy, and how it's causing a serious crisis in the car and technology sectors, among others. So, what are semiconductors actually, and why is the shortage of them a big deal? Here's a quick explanation of what semiconductors are. You've probably seen some of the inner components of an electronic device, such as a computer, TV, laptop, appliance, or mobile phone. You've probably also noticed how they all have something in common. Yes, they all have a flat piece of plastic which is actually mostly made from silicon, which is a semiconducting material, meaning electronic signals can travel through it. You probably also saw that attached to these silicon boards are small or big collections of square-shaped chips that usually have various sizes and colors. These are semiconductors, aka microchips. Just for your info, the most widely used semiconductor device today is the metal oxide semiconductor field effect transistor, or MOSFET for short, which was invented by Mohammed M. Atalla and Dawon Kang at Bell Labs in 1959. So how important are semiconductors? They are extremely important. In fact, your modern lifestyle depends on them. Think of semiconductors as the brains of modern electronics. They're an essential component of electronic devices, enabling advances in communications, computing, healthcare, transportation, clean energy, and countless other applications. Okay, let me emphasize that importance a little further. Imagine life without TVs, computers, laptops, servers, internet, smartphones, medical equipment, video games, and other smart and semi-smart electronics that you take for granted every day. Yeah, that's how life would be without semiconductors. Now you know why I called them the little spider that goes undetected. They're the core of modern technology, yet currently only a few companies produce them, and most of the global supply chain relies on 3 companies to manufacture them. I know what you're thinking, but China can drown the world. The answer is no. China can barely make enough for its local industries, and only one Chinese company called SMIC manufactures semiconductors, and it's not all that good at it. The global semiconductor industry is currently worth around $500 billion. Meanwhile, the World Semiconductor Trade Statistics forecasts that the semiconductor market will grow by at least 10% in 2022, reaching a market size of more than $600 billion. Now, this might not sound much, right? Well, that's true when you take into consideration that the global economy output in 2020 was $80 trillion. However, as much as $12 trillion of that output depended on a steady supply of semiconductors. If you punch e-commerce into the formula, the $12 trillion increases to $30 trillion. Now you're thinking, well, so what? Steel prices skyrocketed in the past 2 years, and it's a very important component for constructing civilization and in numerous industries. Well, I'll tell you what's the difference. Semiconductors development and manufacturing are very complex processes that take years and very specific knowledge and expertise, even in expanding existing factories. Allow me to elaborate further. Some sectors, such as the technology sector, rely on storing enough semiconductors for years to come because a minor disruption in the supply chain can be catastrophic. So, who are the world's top suppliers of semiconductors? They are only a handful of companies. They're Intel, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing, Samsung, Qualcomm, Broadcom, Texas Instruments, ASE Technology Holding, NVIDIA, ST Microelectronics, NV, and NXP Semiconductors. Now you're thinking, oh, wow, I've heard of some of these names before. They're huge multinational companies, so why is there a shortage? Well, because of 2021, only 3 of these companies are able to manufacture the most advanced semiconductors: TSMC of Taiwan, Samsung of South Korea, and Intel of the United States. And of course, COVID-19 caused a serious, yet to be fully figured out problem in the semiconductors supply chain, which is unexpectedly very complex. In addition to all that, tech giants are very secretive and can be very ruthless when it comes to protecting information about their internal workings, inventions, patents, etc. And guess who knows to some extent their top secrets and R&D future plans? Yes, you've guessed it right. The designers and manufacturers of semiconductors do. Another important fact you must know: China produces more than 30% of the global supply of semiconductors, but I didn't include it here because most of its production is for the local market. Chinese semiconductor firms also lag behind in high-value design, fabrication, and equipment segments. Hence, as of right now, the semiconductors are not compatible with the big technology players' needs and specifications. However, this is changing very fast. If a company says that they're in the semiconductors manufacturing business, ask them this question: do you manufacture them? Because in reality, most of the corporations I mentioned above are designers of semiconductors. They don't actually make them, and they mostly rely on one company to translate their designs into actual microchips. The company is Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing, which, according to some experts, manufacture more than 50% of the entire global supply. Yes, I'm talking about Taiwan, which is Chinese and not Chinese at the same time. And China is threatening to invade it. Now, take that for a sleeping pill. Allow me now to briefly highlight the bad news. The semiconductor shortage is unlike any other shortage that causes problems in the supply-demand chain, because it's hard to fix, meaning it takes plenty of time, money, and specific experience. Hence, the impact of the shortage will continue to distort the global economic output until further notice. Why did I say further notice? Because economists cannot agree on whether it's feasible for semiconductor companies to undertake massive steps and risk losing money in the long term due to potential oversupply. They're also assessing the potential of a global recession, which could cripple operations. However, as of right now, experts agree that the shortage is set to keep pushing up inflation until supply catches up with demand in mid to late 2022, which, by the way, is an approximate date. The most negatively affected sector so far is the auto sector. Many automakers already downsized operations and scaled back. Tens of thousands of people lost their jobs, if not hundreds of thousands, despite the recent rise in demand for vehicles. The auto sector is big and a major global employer. Globally, Volkswagen Group and Toyota Motors are the leading car makers in terms of revenue. The Japanese auto giant generated almost $250 billion in revenue in 2020, while Volkswagen raked in a little more than $245 billion. So why are automakers facing a crisis? Because the auto sector has embraced just-in-time supply chain practices for several decades now, generally maintaining very low inventories. Hence, the semiconductors' inventories are empty and the suppliers cannot keep up with their demands. Meanwhile, the big technology players have navigated the chip shortage relatively well, because most of them follow the policy of keeping their inventories fully stocked. However, they are experiencing serious delays due to high demand for electronics, a demand that was caused by COVID-19, which increased a whole new economy based on working from home, remote work, freelancing, e-commerce, and more. Nevertheless, consumer-end electronic prices have gone up. I will now highlight the main factors behind the semiconductors shortage. First factor: The pandemic triggered an unprecedented surge in demand for computers, laptops, smartphones, home entertainment, electronics, and small servers. Second factor, chip producers were already operating at maximum capacity before the pandemic. This fact limited their ability to respond to rising demand. Third factor, the automotive industry, which scaled back its chip orders significantly at the beginning of the pandemic, was taken by surprise at how quickly car sales rebounded in mid-2020, which further contributed to the shortage. Fourth factor, tensions between the US and China. Politics can be a very disruptive force. China recently threatened to invade Taiwan. Fifth factor, the semiconductor industry is highly globalized, which deeply integrated supply chains. The supply-demand crisis created by COVID-19 disrupted the semiconductor supply chains in a very negative way, and the issue has not been even remotely resolved. Experts can't even agree on what exactly happened. And the sixth factor, unprecedented high demand by the technology giants. They have long-term contracts with the semiconductor manufacturers, hence they're not leaving much space for other sectors and industries. Okay, let's move on to the good news. The semiconductor manufacturers are investing heavily in improving and expanding their operations. Governments are also getting involved. In March 2021, the European Union announced the 2030 Digital Compass Initiative, which encompasses around $20 to $35 billion in total incentives for the next 10 years. In May, South Korea's K-Belt Semiconductor Strategy was unveiled, which will provide investment incentives totaling $55 to $65 billion for the next 3 years. Meanwhile, China formulated a plan to heavily increase its focus on technology. Total Chinese investments are projected to amount to around $150 billion for the next 10 years. In the US, the semiconductor sector has been boosted with a $52 billion investment by the government. The production of semiconductors requires both specialized know-how and scale. Thus, it's one of the most money-consuming and R&D intensive manufacturing processes. This means that the shortage problem will not just fade away in weeks or a few months. It's a contributing factor that is pushing inflation and putting people in the auto sector, among others, out of work. Although the current chip shortage has caused a major global economic problem, it's also important to remember that high demand for semiconductors is promising and good news. Semiconductor companies are continuing to expand, and governments are seizing the opportunity to invest in one of the fastest-growing industries in the world. So that's it for this video. Farewell, be cool, and stay freaking positive. And if you'd like to stay updated and informed about the latest international economical news items, hit the subscribe and bell icons. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.